Welcome back to more FPL content. This will be the best wildcard team for Gameweek 12, and you can see the clean sheet odds on screen with Arsenal in top spot again, facing Tottenham Hotspur at home in the North London derby with a 48% probability of keeping a clean sheet. Chelsea are second, just like they were in Gameweek 11, facing Burnley away this time round, and Liverpool make the top three. They have the best fixtures up until Gameweek 16, and they face Nottingham Forest at home next, who are bottom in terms of all Premier League teams for Gameweek 12, with a 12% chance of keeping a clean sheet at Anfield. But the rest of the top six includes Fulham, Bournemouth, and Crystal Palace. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below as always. Drop a like on this video, subscribe to my channel, and also hit the notification bell so you're always up to date with my content, both FPL and UCL Fantasy, which will return over the next week ahead of match day 5. So stay tuned for the best limitless and wildcard squads, my team selection, and the Tuesday deadline stream, of course, next week. And for FPL, there's still my team selection to look forward to. And if you want to see a predicted lineups, then let's get this video to over 150 likes and close in on new goals like 38,000 subscribers on YouTube. And I'm also going to show you different graphics, updates, team news, and everything that you need to know. That includes the top 10 captains, which will be shown in my team selection video. The same goes for FPL Challenge as well. Check all the links in the description for my Patreon and the championships, further access to my videos, prior to comments, amongst many other perks. My Discord server, the FPL and FPL Challenge leagues, as well as Spotify can also be found in the description. But without further ado, let's jump straight into this. When you add up my squad value and what I have in the bank, I have 101.8 million to spend on this 50-man squad. But as I always say, spending power is different to overall team value, and that's something that I've discussed in many FPL podcasts throughout the season. I'll start off with the two goalkeepers and work my way up through every single position, highlighting the best players in every single area, and also talking about fixtures, form, and also a few other things you need to bear in mind. Injury updates, of course, will be a massive thing. We have multiple yellow flag players. Many of the key assets were discussed in my Transfers podcast yesterday, and much more will be delved into after Friday's press conferences with a potential predicted lineups video and the deadline stream. David Raya is second in terms of FPL points scored amongst goalkeepers, only behind Rufs, who has been outstanding in this Premier League campaign. But I think with the upcoming fixtures in mind, Arsenal will keep more clean sheets than Sunderland, and Raya will rise to the top spot for goalkeepers. But I also think Arsenal have some tricky games of their own, facing Tottenham at home. They've also got Bayern Munich in the Champions League sandwiched in between that Chelsea fixture in Gameweek 13. And after that, it gets a bit better for Arsenal, but they could be without Gabriel for the next 4 weeks, and some reports indicate he could be out until January, which would be a massive blow for the Gunners. But their biggest strength is their defence, and they have so much depth in those positions. So the likes of Hincapié could replace Gabriel and do a very solid job. Even Mosquera could partner Saliba and form a very solid partnership. They've also got Calafiori, White, and Timber who can play in central defence, but a lot of those players, of course, have predominantly played in fullback positions over the last couple of seasons. But I think Raya is now the best way of covering Arsenal defensively, and you don't need to triple up now. I think the best time to have done that would have been a month ago, and now we're looking at 1 or 2 Arsenal defenders / Raya in goal to cover the Gunners in this position, and they will keep the most clean sheets of any team this season. And despite conceding twice to Sunderland, that was a rare blip for them. They've usually been so solid. They have by far the best expected goals conceded numbers in the Premier League, and they're also on course to potentially rival Chelsea's all-time record of 15 goals conceded in a Premier League season. But it will be a mighty task for Arsenal to surpass that and break the record. But as for the backup goalkeeper, I'll keep it simple once again with Martin Dubravka, who costs 4 million. You don't need to spend a lot of money in terms of having two expensive goalkeepers like Donnarumma and Raya. I would not recommend that. So pick your poison when it comes to the premiums. And even then, I think in a lot of FPL seasons, we like to have that sort of 4.5 to 5 million goalkeeper. And that should be enough to kind of steady the ship until your next wildcard in the second half of the season. Remember, we've got double boosters this time round with the free hits, bench boost, triple captains, and you can also use these chips in the second half of the campaign from Gameweek 20 onwards. But with the wildcard, you want to save that second wildcard until later in the campaign when we've got a lot of doubles and blanks after Gameweek 30. So I think by wildcarding in Gameweek 12 or 13, you can set a long-term foundation for your 50-man squad, and everyone gets 5 free transfers in Gameweek 16 because of AFCON. Marcus Senesi has been slightly disappointing in FPL over the last couple of weeks, but he had such a strong start with defensive contributions, a couple of clean sheets and even goal contributions to get plenty of bonus points, and he is still right up there in terms of points scored amongst defenders. He is just outside the top 5, which comprise of Gabriel, Timber, Gay, Calafiori and Daniel Munoz, but Senesi is cheaper than all of those options, and 3 of them are yellow flagged, with the likes of Gabriel potentially missing out for the next 4 to 6 weeks anyway, potentially even longer than that. So I think Senesi is the best way of covering Bournemouth defensively, and he's still worth spending the extra millions over Truffert and Diakite, who is sometimes benched there for the Cherries. So really with Bournemouth, I think it's either Truffert or Senesi, and I would go for the Argentine simply because of those defensive contributions. The next defender is going to be a bit cheaper, and I think with Crystal Palace you can go for plenty of their options defensively. Daniel Munoz, Mark Gay, if he's fit, he's probably the best of the lot as things stand, but Chris Richards offers great value with 52 points scored for this season, plenty of defensive contributions, a few bonus points, but not much when it comes to goal threat. He's not going to get as many as Mark Gay and Daniel Munoz, that's for sure, but he also costs 4.5 million. He's got very low ownership and he goes massively under the radar, and I think Chris Richards will be a very good FPL asset for the Christmas period, and I'd highly recommend him. Now, we have seen him bench sometimes in the Europa Conference League, but even Daniel Munoz recently got a benching and rest, which is so rare for him. But Crystal Palace will need to be very astute with their rotation and team selection, and Oliver Glasner will have such a packed schedule, especially in December, but it's still worth covering their defence overall. Lacroix is also brilliant when it comes to defensive contributions. I've owned him in FPL for quite a while now, but I think Richards offers even better value in this position. The next option will be a premium, and this could be a great Gabriel replacement in Virgil van Dijk, who costs 5.9 million, and Liverpool have promising fixtures on the horizon against Nottingham Forest, West Ham, and also Leeds over the coming weeks. Even Sunderland at home could be decent, but I would fancy Liverpool to keep 1 or 2 clean sheets over the next 4 matches, and if they can do that, and you couple that with a goal from Van Dijk, defensive contributions and bonus points, I think a massive return is also on the cards, and Van Dijk is by far the best way of covering Liverpool defensively, and they could be bolstered by the return of Alisson Becker after this international break, but they were very poor defensively against Man City. A bit unfortunate with some of the goals they conceded and the nature of them. Virgil van Dijk also had a goal wrongfully disallowed, and that would have been the equaliser at the time, but we all know Van Dijk always offers that set-piece threat. He scored against Frankfurt in the Champions League back in match day 2, I believe, and ultimately Van Dijk is such a solid option, and I think Van Dijk is going to be right up there when it comes to points scored amongst defenders, but he's also very expensive, and Liverpool have lost 5 Premier League games already so far this season. But there are 2 spots left for this position, and one of them might surprise you, but he should be a like-for-like replacement for Gabriel. And if you are struggling to get to Jurrien Timber, who is my preferred Arsenal defender, to partner David Raya and have that Arsenal defensive double-up, I think Hincapié could be a very underrated shout, costing only 5.4 million with no Premier League starts up until now, but that could well change in the North London derby. And if you're still quite bullish on that Gunners defence, then I think Hincapié could be a very solid shout there. And I think he's going to be the main starter for the next month or so until Gabriel returns from injury. But rotation could be possible for the Gunners. They've also got a very packed schedule with that quarter-final in the Carabao Cup against Crystal Palace, plenty of Champions League matches in between, and of course those Premier League games which are coming thick and fast, particularly in the next month or so. I think Hincapié isn't a guarantee, and something you could do here, for example, is replace Richards with an Aston Villa defender like Matty Cash or Luka Dean, and then go for Daniel Munoz instead of Hincapié if you're really struggling to get to the likes of Jurrien Timber at 6.2 million. He went up in price overnight, of course, so I think that is something else to bear in mind. I also talk about this in my team selection and the deadline stream, but we've got space for one more defender, and he's going to be a cheap enabler at 4.2 million in Mukiele. But you've also got Ballard, who costs 4.6 million. He scored and got DEFCON against Arsenal, and he's been very consistent when it comes to defensive contributions. You've got Rodon, other Leeds defenders there like Goodmanson, but I think Mukiele might offer the best value of all of those players I just mentioned. And despite Sunderland having some tough fixtures on the horizon, I think Mukiele is the perfect 5th defender, and when needed he can come on and do a decent job in terms of automatic substitutions and just bolster your defensive line whenever you need. One of the best FPL assets I've owned this season is Iliman Ndiaye, who can get defensive contributions quite consistently for a winger. He's on penalties and he's getting plenty of bonus points in the process. He is by far the best Everton attacker. I've been very consistent on that since the Jack Grealish hype, of course, in August when he won the Player of the Month award for that particular month, but I think Ndiaye will just offer that sheer consistency, score far more goals than Grealish and every other Everton player. And even though you've got Jordan Pickford in goal and a few decent defenders there like Michael Keane, who could certainly be considered as well as a sort of Chris Richards replacement if you decide to go for Daniel Munoz over Gabriel, I think Ndiaye is the one Everton player that I'd highly recommend. His ownership is still relatively low at around 12%, and he costs 6.6 million, so he offers great value in this position. So does Ismaila Sarr, but he doesn't make the final cut in this wildcard squad. Instead, I'm going to go for another similarly priced midfielder at that sort of price range. Declan Rice is someone else to also bear in mind. Moises Caicedo, they should all be in the mix, but I'm going to go for the doubtful Enzo Fernandez in this team. I believe he'll be available in Gameweek 12 against Burnley away, and he'll start that match. And if he does play in a more advanced position, that's only going to bolster his FPL prospects. He could also be on penalties in the absence of Cole Palmer, but ultimately, if he is ruled out over the next couple of days, then you can switch him to a Declan Rice or Ismaila Sarr, and that could be your solution to this yellow flag headache. So just bear that in mind. Even Moises Caicedo will offer defensive contributions quite regularly and the odd goal here and there. So Caicedo could be a nice like-for-like replacement for Enzo Fernandez, but he won't offer the same level of attacking threat, particularly from open play. I've also analysed Enzo's stats, and some of them are very impressive. The XG is over 4, for example, and I think he offers plenty of creativity and goal-scoring prowess for a midfielder at 6.7 million. But the next option is going to be from Arsenal, and it's not Declan Rice, but instead I'm going for the expensive Bukayo Saka at 10.1 million. He scored a great goal against Sunderland. He likes to do this sort of near post finish, and usually it goes in the top corner, but this one was very well placed in the bottom side of the net. And I think Saka has levels to reach in terms of goal scoring and also the creativity, because he is creating some big chances with 17 key passes, but he has no assists so far this season. I think that will come over time, especially when Arsenal get key players back from injury like Victor Gyökeres, Martin Odegaard, Gabriel Martinelli, Noni Madueke, Kai Havertz, and Gabriel Jesus. But of course, Gabriel has joined the injury list, and that will be obviously a massive blow for Arsenal, especially in set pieces and the defending. He's a real leader at the back. And in terms of Saka's chances of getting assists from set pieces, that will diminish slightly with Gabriel being out for the next month or two. But let's wait for official confirmation first. That's what Arsenal fear at this moment in time. But irrespective of that, both Saka and Rice will get plenty of assists from set pieces. They always create some big opportunities from those set plays, and also from open play they can also create some huge chances for their teammates. And Bukayo Saka is so consistent, and despite a few blips and maybe not showing the same level since returning from that injury back in March, I still think he's getting there slowly but surely, and he's going to score and assist more consistently from now until the end of the season. But let's complete this midfield with two other options, and I have to include this player here who is fourth in terms of points scored amongst midfielders, technically joint third with Moises Caicedo, and that's Brian Mbeumo, who's been the most informed midfielder over the past month. He also won the Premier League Player of the Month award, and it was rightfully deserved there. He costs 8.5 million, and he could go up in price even further. He is the template United midfielder right now, and I wouldn't even mind a switch from Bruno Fernandes to Mbeumo, particularly if you're also using the extra funds to upgrade another position. But right now they're very similarly priced. Only 0.4 million separates the two when it comes to their price tag. And the last option only costs 5.2 million, and he is going to complete this and be your main option off the bench and be your fifth midfielder / eighth attacker. And that's Granit Xhaka, who can score defensive contributions quite regularly, get the odd goal or assist, but I think mainly with him, you're going to get assists and bonus points and DEFCON. Don't expect too many goals, despite the one he scored against Everton fairly recently, but he's a real leader for Sunderland, and he has been one of the best signings of the Premier League season so far. And even in FPL, he has surpassed all expectations. He's right up there with Gravenberch, Pedro Neto, Cullen, and then of course you're approaching the likes of Salah and Ndiaye, who are just behind the top four so far. Semenyo is still number one, but he is yellow flagged and doubtful for that game against West Ham. Declan Rice is second, and I would highly recommend him as well. Caicedo and Mbeumo are also just behind there in terms of the best midfielders in FPL. Any single one of them could be considered, although I'd be less keen on Gravenberch personally. He's still a decent FPL option, of course, but I think the others look even more appealing. But let's now move on to the free forwards, and this is where things look a bit more template in the grand scheme of things. Jean-Philippe Mateta only has 4 points more than Jarrod Bowen, who has been completely out of form, and West Ham have been so inconsistent this season. And Mateta is only 4th in terms of points scored amongst forwards. The likes of Igor Thiago, Joao Pedro, and of course Erling Haaland are above him in the pecking order. And speaking of which, Erling Haaland also makes it into this team. If I'm building a wildcard squad or even making free transfers in the forward position, these are the two players I prioritise the most, with Erling Haaland still being number one, despite facing Newcastle away up next. But then Man City have brilliant fixtures. If you still have the triple captaincy, using it in Gameweek 13 when Haaland faces Leeds at home, I think that's the best way to kind of use that chip for the first half of this season. But I think these two are a mainstay. Then it becomes quite debatable between Joao Pedro, Igor Thiago, Voltemada and Danny Welbeck. Those would be the main standouts. Once Victor Gyökeres is back from his injury, he would be another option to consider in this position. But I think Igor Thiago has to be in this team. It does say I'm 1.3 million over budget, but that's for someone who has just started FPL right now and they've got no value tied up with these players. But that is the case with me, as I'll show you using the website FPL.team. I think these three forwards will offer consistency. And by the way, Igor Thiago is second for points scored amongst forwards with 60 points and 8 Premier League goals so far. He's on penalties for Brentford, and I think he has been outstanding so far this season when it comes to FPL production. So this is the 50-man squad. You've got a nice balance there, 2 Crystal Palace players. You've got a triple up in Arsenal, but that could obviously be changed. And I'll also discuss this using the website FPL.team, which can be used to visualize future game weeks, highlight the captaincy and the fixtures for Game Week 12 and beyond. Both goalkeepers in this wildcard squad have difficult fixtures on paper for Game Week 12, but I would prefer David Raya, and this would be the case for virtually every single game week, as Arsenal rank top of the clean sheet odds for the North London derby. Senesi, Richards and Virgil van Dijk would complete the defensive line, with Saka, Ndai, Mbeumo and Enzo Fernandez in the midfield, with a front three of Mateta, Haaland and Igor Thiago, which should do the job in most game weeks. On the bench there's Martin Dubravka, Xhaka, Hincapié and Mukiele. The expected points is 55.1. I've put the armband on Haaland. I still think he's the best captaincy option, which I'll delve into in my team selection. And Bryan Mbeumo is a relatively close second, facing Everton at home. He's also very much in form. He's got the midfielder advantage with the extra point for scoring a goal and for securing a clean sheet if Man United were to do so. But in terms of alternative picks and how you could shape things a little bit differently, I would have 0.2 million in the bank with this 50-man squad. Raya and Dubravka would remain, with Senesi, Virgil van Dijk and Mukiele, but Munoz and Cash would come in for this defensive line, which I referenced earlier. You could also go for Luka Dean, for example, or different 4.5 million defenders like Joachim Andersen from Fulham. Declan Rice will take the place of Bukayo Saka, and that gives you enough money to buy Antoine Semenyo and also Ismaila Sarr in the midfield, but I'd highly recommend Bryan Mbeumo. I know Bruno Fernandes is still a decent option, but I think Mbeumo offers far more threat from open play, and he's certainly the more informed player at this moment in time, and Caicedo could replace Granit Xhaka. So by doing Saka to Rice, you can upgrade several other areas, but some of them are debatable, like Caicedo against Xhaka. It's not really a massive upgrade in my opinion. Mateta, Haaland and Thiago would remain, to be honest. I do like Voltemada still, Gyökeres when he's back from injury, which could be a little bit further than expected, and the likes of Kai Havertz, for example, did suffer a setback in his injury, as actually unveiled by the German national team manager Julian Nagelsmann. So Arsenal are going for a bit of a rough patch when it comes to injuries. I've highlighted this for a while, and they felt the effects against Sunderland, and they might well do so with those 3 difficult games in a week against Tottenham, Bayern Munich and Chelsea. But overall, you've got a solid platform with this wildcard squad, and you've got a few different ideas on how to cover every single position in the best possible way, with form, fixtures also brought in mind. And I think with the captaincy, it's going to be a bit boring, but Haaland would take the cake in most of these game weeks coming up, unless we see a significant change and other premiums show that consistency and high ceiling, like Bukayo Saka, Cole Palmer when he's back from injury, Mohamed Salah, who could also be factored in for the wild card. And you might argue there is a lack of a Liverpool attacker to really target those upcoming fixtures. And apart from Salah, I'd maybe suggest Ekitike, but you've also got Alexander Isak knocking on the door. He is available, but for Sweden, he was benched in both matches so far, but we could see him integrated into certain Premier League matches and start some of them over the coming weeks, but I think Ekitike would be the preference there. And Cody Gakpo is a decent shout in the midfield, but he has been benched on several occasions in the Premier League as well. And also in that game against Real Madrid, it was Florian Wirtz playing on the left. We saw that replicated against Man City in that 3-0 loss. So there's certainly a lot to consider with this wildcard squad. I'll talk about this in more detail in my team selection with a few little tweaks here and there and a few other ideas, because I've also got the wildcard and free hit chips still at my disposal for the first half of the season. And despite having a lot of great momentum over the past 6 to 8 game weeks, I want to build upon that even further and crack into the top 100k and start cementing myself into a very solid position until the end of the season. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found insightful, then like this video, subscribe to my channel, and also hit the notification bell so you're always up to date on my content for both FPL and UCL Fantasy, which will return over the weekend and going into next Tuesday. You can follow me on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description for my Patreon and the championships, for access to my videos, amongst many other perks. My Discord server, the FPL League, and Spotify can also be found in the description. Let's get this video to over 150 likes and closing on new goals like 38k on YouTube. I'll see you on Saturday for the next FPL deadline stream, and keep your eyes peeled for the upcoming team selection podcast and a potential predicted lineups video.